Look at the bill in your wallet. It's just a piece of paper with some ink on it. We all agree it has value, so it does. But history shows this agreement never lasts forever. Every single paper currency eventually hits a breaking point. It has happened hundreds of times before. You might think our modern system is different. It isn't. The cycle always follows the same path. It starts with a promise. A government tells its people that this paper represents something real. Usually that something is gold or silver. You could take the paper to a bank and trade it for the metal. That trust is what makes the system work in the beginning. But then something changes. The government needs more money than it actually has. Maybe there is a war to fund. Maybe they want to build massive infrastructure projects. Or maybe they just overspent on social programs. They realize they can't just dig more gold out of the ground. So they do the only thing they can. They start printing more paper. At first, nobody really notices. Prices stay mostly the same. The economy even feels like it's booming. But you can't create wealth out of thin air without a cost. Slowly, the link between the paper and the real asset starts to weaken. Eventually, that link is broken entirely. The paper is no longer backed by anything but a promise. This is what we call fiat money. It relies completely on the public's faith in the government. Have you ever wondered why prices always seem to go up? That's not just a coincidence. It's a direct result of the money supply growing too fast. When there is more money chasing the same amount of goods, prices rise. Your savings start to lose their punch. The $100 you tucked away 10 years ago doesn't buy what it used to. This is the hidden tax on everyone who holds the currency. It happens so slowly that most people don't get angry until it's too late. But once the process starts, it's almost impossible to stop. Governments rarely choose to stop printing. They usually print even faster to try and fix the problems they created. This creates a downward spiral. It has happened in ancient China. It happened in revolutionary France. It happened in Weimar Germany. And it's happening in various parts of the world right now. The signs are always the same. The debt grows to a level that can never be paid back. The only way out is to devalue the currency. This is the moment where the paper starts to return to its true value. Zero. Wait a minute. How did we even get here? It started with a simple convenience. Gold and silver are heavy to carry around. If you have a lot of wealth, moving it is dangerous. So early banks offered a deal. They would hold your metal in a secure vault. In return, they gave you a receipt. That receipt was a piece of paper. It said you owned a specific amount of gold. People realized it was easier to trade the receipts than the metal. This was the birth of representative money. It worked perfectly for a long time. The paper was just a stand-in for the real thing. But banks noticed something interesting. People rarely came back to claim their gold at the same time. Most of the gold just sat in the vault gathering dust. The bankers saw an opportunity to make a profit. They started issuing more receipts than they had gold to back them up. They lent these extra receipts out to collect interest. This is the moment the system changed forever. It was no longer one-to-one. The bank was gambling that not everyone would want their gold at once. This worked until there was a crisis. When people get scared, they want their physical assets. This is called a bank run. If the bank doesn't have the gold, the paper becomes worthless instantly. Governments eventually took over this process. They saw how much power came with controlling the paper. They realized they could spend money they didn't have. In the United States, this transition took decades. It started with the creation of the Federal Reserve. Before that, many different banks issued their own notes. Now, only one entity had the power to print. For a long time, the US dollar was still tied to gold. You could actually trade a $20 bill for an ounce of gold. Then came the World Wars. The costs were astronomical. Governments everywhere needed to spend more than their gold reserves allowed. They started cheating on the gold standard. They printed more money to pay for the soldiers and the tanks. By the time the wars ended, the system was strained. The world tried to fix it with the Bretton Woods Agreement, but the pressure kept building. In 1971, everything changed. President Nixon made a televised announcement. He officially ended the link between the dollar and gold. He said it was temporary. It wasn't. The dollar became pure fiat money. Since that day, the amount of money in existence has exploded. Look at the national debt clock. It's moving faster than you can read the numbers. That's the sound of the paper losing its value. What happens when there is no limit on printing? The government starts to treat the press like a magic wand. They can pay for anything they want without raising taxes. If they need $1 trillion, they just type it into a computer. This feels like free money at first. The stock market goes up and people feel wealthy. But the real world doesn't work that way. The amount of goods and services hasn't actually increased. There are still the same number of houses and cars. There is still the same amount of food in the grocery store. When you double the money but keep the goods the same, something has to give. That something is the price tag. This is the process of inflation. Most people think inflation is prices going up. That's not quite right. Inflation is actually the value of the money going down. It takes more units of the currency to buy the same loaf of bread. Think about what your parents paid for their first house. It might have been $30,000 or $40,000. Today, that same house might cost $500,000. Is the house 10 times better than it used to be? Of course not. The house is exactly the same. It's the dollar that has shrunk. The government loves this because it shrinks their debt too. If they owe $1 trillion, it's easier to pay back with cheaper money. But for you, it's a disaster. Your salary usually doesn't keep up with the printing press. You work just as hard, but you can afford less every year. This creates a massive gap between the rich and the poor. The people who own assets like real estate or stocks get richer. Their assets go up in price along with the inflation. But the people who save cash or live on a fixed income get crushed. Their life savings are slowly being bled away. Have you checked your bank account's interest rate lately? It's probably close to zero. Meanwhile, the cost of living is rising by 5 or 10%. You are losing money every single day just by holding it. This is the trap of paper money. It forces you to gamble your savings just to stay even. You can't just work hard and save anymore. You have to become an investor or a speculator. If you don't, the system will eventually leave you with nothing. This is why people start to lose faith in the currency. They realize the game is rigged against the saver. They start looking for ways to get out of the paper system. They look for things that can't be printed: gold, silver, land, or even digital assets. They want something that the government can't devalue with a keystroke. Because once the trust is gone, the paper is just trash. History has seen this movie before. Look at what happened in ancient Rome. They didn't have printing presses back then. They used silver coins called denarii. The empire grew too large and too expensive to maintain. The emperors needed to pay the legions to keep them loyal. They didn't have enough silver to go around. So they started a process called clipping. They would take a silver coin and mix it with cheaper copper. At first, the coin looked the same to the average person, but the silver content dropped from 95% to 50%. Eventually, it dropped to less than 5% silver. The coin was just a piece of copper with a thin silver wash. Prices for grain and oil skyrocketed across the empire. The soldiers realized their pay was worth nothing. The economy collapsed into bartering because nobody trusted the money. Centuries later, the same thing happened in France. The revolutionary government issued paper notes called assignats. They claimed that paper was backed by seized church lands, but they printed way more paper than the land was worth. People started burning the money for warmth because wood was more expensive. The government tried to pass laws to force people to accept the paper. If you refused the money, you could be sent to the guillotine. Even the threat of death couldn't save the currency. The laws of economics were stronger than the laws of the state. The assignats eventually hit zero value and were abandoned. Then there is the famous case of the Weimar Republic. After World War I, Germany owed massive reparations. They decided to print their way out of the debt. It started slowly, then accelerated into madness. A loaf of bread went from half a mark to billions of marks. People carried their cash in wheelbarrows just to buy groceries. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day. They would give their bundles of cash to their wives through the factory fence. The wives would run to the store before the prices changed again. Shopkeepers stopped using cash registers and started using scales. They didn't count the money, they weighed it. The middle class was completely wiped out in a matter of months. All their life savings were gone and they were left with nothing. This total loss of stability led to a desperate population. Desperate people often make dangerous choices. History shows that when the money fails, the social order follows. Is that happening today? The scales are different, but the math is the same. The global debt is now higher than the total value of everything on Earth. How can that ever be paid back? It can't be paid back in honest money. It can only be paid back by making the money worth less. That is the stage we are entering right now. You can see it in the rising cost of everything you need to survive. Look at the global debt clock right now. It's a number so big it doesn't even feel real anymore. Trillions of dollars are added every single year. Where does that money come from? It's borrowed from the future. But the future is starting to arrive. Governments are trapped in a corner they can't escape. If they raise interest rates to stop inflation, the economy crashes. If they keep printing to save the economy, the currency dies. They are choosing the second option. Because it's easier in the short term. This is why your groceries cost 30% more than they did 2 years ago. The supply chain isn't the only reason for these high prices. The true reason is that there are simply too many dollars in the system. When you flood the market with paper, the paper loses its power. Central banks are now buying gold at record levels. Ask yourself why they're doing that. If the paper they print is so good, why do they want the metal? They know the history of fiat currency better than anyone. They are hedging their bets against their own system. They see the cracks forming in the foundation of the global economy. The dominance of the US dollar is being challenged. Countries are starting to trade in other currencies for the first time in decades. This reduces the demand for the dollar globally. When those trillions of dollars start flowing back to the United States, watch out. Inflation won't just be a nuisance, it will be a tidal wave. We are seeing the same patterns that preceded every other collapse: excessive debt, constant printing, and a loss of public trust. Most people still think the government will step in and save them. But the government is the one driving the printing press. They cannot fix the problem because they are the problem. The system is designed to favor the big banks and the politicians. It isn't designed to protect your retirement fund. In fact, your retirement fund is exactly what is being liquidated. Every time the Fed prints, your purchasing power disappears. It's a slow motion robbery that most people never see coming. They just feel the squeeze at the gas pump and the checkout line. They wonder why they can't get ahead despite working 40 hours a week. The answer is simple. The goalposts are being moved. The currency is a melting ice cube in your hand. The longer you hold it, the less of it you have. This is the hidden reality of the world we live in. It's a giant experiment that has failed every time it's been tried. From the Song dynasty to the modern day, the ending is the same. The paper returns to its intrinsic value. 0. Is there any way to protect yourself from this cycle? You have to stop thinking of money as just paper. Real money is something that can't be created by a politician. It's something that has utility and scarcity. We are moving toward a massive reset of the global financial order. The only question is who will be left holding the bag. So, what does the end game look like? It usually starts with a sudden loss of confidence. One day the money works and the next day it doesn't. People stop accepting the paper for their goods. They want something they can hold, something tangible. You see this when people start hoarding physical assets. They buy gold, silver tools, and non-perishable food. They realize the numbers on their screen are just digital illusions. The government will try to stop the panic with new laws. They might limit how much cash you can withdraw. They might even make it illegal to own certain assets. We've seen this before in the 1930s with Executive Order 6102. The U.S. government forced citizens to hand over their gold. They didn't do it to help the people. They did it to save the system. When the system is failing, the rules change overnight. You can see the seeds of the next system being planted now. Many governments are talking about central bank digital currencies. This isn't like the money in your bank app today. It's a system where the government can track every single cent you spend. They could even put an expiration date on your money to force you to spend it. This is the ultimate evolution of fiat currency. Total control over the population through the supply of money. But even a digital system can't fix the basic math of debt. If the debt keeps growing, the currency will still fail. History doesn't care if the money is paper or digital. If you create too much of it, it becomes worthless. The cycle is reaching its natural conclusion once again. Look at the price of gold over the last 20 years. Look at the price of a modest home compared to the average salary. These aren't just market fluctuations. They are warning shots across the bow of the global economy. The middle class is being hollowed out to keep the ship afloat. But the ship is taking on too much water. Eventually, a new system will have to be born from the ashes. It has happened after every major currency collapse in history. The world goes back to something real, something with a limit, until the next generation forgets the lesson and starts the cycle again. The human desire for free money is a powerful force. It's a temptation that governments can never seem to resist, but there is no such thing as a free lunch in economics. Someone always pays the bill in the end. Usually, it's the people who trusted the system the most. They are the ones left with a pile of worthless paper. Don't be one of those people caught off guard. Pay attention to the history that is repeating itself right now. Understand that the money in your pocket is a temporary tool. It isn't a permanent store of your life's work. The system is fragile, and the cracks are widening every day. The history of paper money is a history of failure, and it's happening again.